Greetings Terrarians, Khaios here. Today we're going to be discussing puzzle designs. Here we go. So today we'll be once again discussing the Harbinger Adventure map. The puzzle that I'd like to talk about is an image-based one that you can find in the holodeck area. It's based off of a puzzle designed by Yrimir in his Adventure on Zork map. It's a light puzzle with gem spark blocks where he has you fill in a pyramid by pulling levers that create random shapes within the pyramid. Once you have the entire pyramid lit up, it opens the way for you. My twist on that design is going to be you're going to have an image on the left and you're going to be pulling levers in the same fashion to recreate the image on the right. So we're going to go ahead and get started by creating an outline frame. And I just find that it's easier to see with it. So I'm going to be using the design that I used in Harbinger just to make things easier on myself. So I'll be using that same skull shape. And the gem spark blocks themselves are going to be in a 9x9 block. Like this. I'm going to fill it in with gem spark. The reason why I prefer to use gem spark for something like this rather than, say, actuators is with actuators, if you turn off and turn on blocks in the middle, while they do get darker or lighter depending on what position they're in, they blend with everything around them. The same thing happens if I were to actuate the gem spark blocks here. However, if you turn off gem spark blocks or turn them on with just a wire to light them up or make them dark, they actually do not blend with the other gem spark blocks around them, which makes it possible to have an image pop out from absolutely nowhere. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish filling in this frame. We're going to be using the wire now to recreate the skull design. So when we turn that switch, now we have the skull shape. So what I'm going to do is just repeat the exact same thing over here so that we have our base image, and this will be the puzzle that we'll pull levers to get the image designed to match. So now that we have the skull in both positions identically, we could just go ahead and remove all of the wiring that we have here. We don't need it anymore. And once we're done with that, I will be laying down a row of levers, which will be what the input is to get the image on the right to change. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and drop down 8 levers. Like that. Now, the first thing that I need to do, since this is already in the solved position, is I want to match up the levers that I want to be used for the solution of the puzzle. So, if I choose, say, this lever, those 2 levers, and that lever to be the solution, that means to get this image to look like this, you'll need to not pull this lever, pull this one, don't pull these 2, pull these 2, leave that one alone, and pull this one. So you need these 4 down to get that. Next, we're going to go ahead and start wiring up the levers that are in the down position into the image. Now, the most important part about this is that we make sure all of the dark spaces that make up the shape of the skull are turned off, which means they all need to have some wire from these down position levers touching them. Another thing to note is when you do a pattern like this, try not to make it too big, because if I were to fill this in all the way, when I just pull this lever alone, to make it very apparent what part of the skull this is. So the more vague you make this, the harder it will be to solve the puzzle. Next we'll just move on to the next down lever, because that's probably good for that right there. Now, I could run this green wire straight up through here, but there's something that you need to note when it comes to these dark spaces. They need to have an odd number of wires on them. And the reason for that is if there's an even number, when we pull two of the levers, one will turn them off, and the other one will turn the block back on. So if you have an odd number, it'll turn it back off again. So if I were to run this green wire up through there, and when we have a white board just like this, and I pull the red lever, it'll turn these two blocks off, but when I pull this green one, it'll turn them back on, and obviously we want them off. So either we need to add a third wire to those blocks, like that, which will turn it back off, or we need to make sure that there's only one color of wire touching the black spaces. So for now, just gonna leave the one color there, and we'll move on to green. We'll start by going over here. And it's totally okay for you to enter the white spaces as well. You don't need to cover all of the white spaces in the solution levers like you need to cover the black ones, but it can help make the solution a little less apparent if you have the white squares covered like that. The thing to note about the white squares, however, is they're the polar opposite of the dark ones in every way. And what I mean by that is, you remember how I said the dark ones need an odd number of wires on them? Well, the light ones need an even number. So everywhere that I have this green wire running through and touching the on gemspark blocks, I need to make sure that I have an additional wire color there. So when I grab this yellow one, I'll need to make sure it comes around and touches those two green wire spots. It can come up here, and it needs to touch those green wire spots because they're in the white gemspark area, but don't touch this one because it's dark. I'll actually just bring this around, touch right there, those gaps as well. And we'll move on to the last lever that'll be part of the solution. That's going to be another group. Just bring that out. Now, very important that I don't cross the similar colors. So I can't put a green wire here, because then this lever and this lever will be activating the same clump. So that's not what we want to happen. So I need to make sure that we don't have any of those light colors crossing. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit like that. And right there. Now, since these light spaces now have a green wire on them, and we need to make it even, I'm just going to run the red out like that. And I'm going to grab the yellow because we need to cover all of the dark spaces. I'm just going to bring it down to get the spots that we missed. Like that. Except I probably shouldn't cross those there. I'll just bring this green one out. Make sure that we have an odd number. So now, when I go through and I turn off the solution levers, you'll see that it resets the board to a completely white position. And obviously, going through and pulling the solution levers give you the skull. Now, the only thing left to do in terms of wiring up these levers is to just go ahead and put wires on all of the non-solution levers and just put them randomly throughout the board. These can go anywhere with one exception. You don't want colors from wire colors from one lever crossing a different lever. So when I go and I place the red wire from this lever, I want to make sure that it doesn't touch anything over here. Other than that, there's no restrictions on where you can put it because we don't want these levers pulled for the solution anyway. So you don't need to worry about an even number of wire or an odd number of wire. Just go ahead and fill these in however you want. Just like that. So now that we have all the wires on all the levers, you'll see that we just get random shapes, seemingly. But when you start combining them, you'll see that patterns start to emerge. Like you could start to see the skull right here. If you go like that, you can really see the skull. So players will just go through here, figure out how exactly to make the image. The last thing that we need to do is wire up all of the levers to a really big AND gate, which will decipher the levers that we used, and if we use the correct ones, it will send an output signal. So we're going to take this AND gate and we're going to top it off with 8 on lamps. The reason we want everything on is because the puzzle's already been solved. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take the wires from levers, run them straight up into the AND gate. This. We're just going to do that for all of the colors. Like that. So just to demonstrate when this sends a signal, I'm just going to place 2 blocks here and a door. I'm going to run a little bit of wire out to the door. So now you'll see when we unsolve the puzzle, the door will activate, and when we solve the puzzle, it'll activate again. So if we do any combination other than this solution, nothing's going to happen. But if we make sure we do the solution, then the door is going to open itself. Like that. And that's pretty much the puzzle in a nutshell. If you wanted to make the puzzle more difficult, you could increase the size of the images, or you can increase the number of the levers, or you could make the patterns a little more complicated for the wires on each lever. And same thing, if you wanted to make it more simple, you could reduce the number of levers or the size of the image, or just simplify the wire patterns. And that will be it for today's tutorial. If you liked what you saw, be sure to leave me a like, a comment, and subscribe. I always love receiving your feedback. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Happy building!